Hello, welcome to Livvy's Ranger Garage. On this YouTube channel, I hope to produce a series of videos teaching you about automotive electrical systems. We will cover basic electricity, how to troubleshoot electrical problems, and how to add and modify circuits in your vehicle. These videos are primarily aimed at owners of Ford Rangers, Explorers, and Bronco 2s, but most of the principles here will also apply to other vehicles. My name is Eric, and this channel is named for my dog Livvy. I hope you find these videos useful. Thanks for watching. Well, good morning. Today on Livvy's Ranger Garage, we're going to troubleshoot a no start condition. I know this is pretty commonly asked on the forums, and it happened to me the other day. I went on a trip, got the Ranger off the trailer, was hoping to go out four-wheeling, and before I got to do anything fun, it got to where it wouldn't start. So we're going to troubleshoot this for your benefit. I'm pretty sure it's a fuel pump, and I've already gone through most of the troubleshooting steps, but I'm going to go through it again from the beginning in what I hope is a pretty logical order and show you what you need to check and do to decide whether it's fuel related or ignition related or something else, and how to proceed with fixing it. So here we go. One of the first things to do is, of course, we're going to be trying to start the truck, so make sure it's not in gear. Mine's a standard, so I just pulled it back into neutral. If yours is an automatic, make sure it's in park or neutral, and it'll be a good idea to chock the wheels. You can probably see here I still have the truck on the trailer. Since it won't start, I'm not worried about taking it off the trailer yet. I can work on it just like this. In fact, I have a nice, beautiful platform to lay on if I have to get underneath to do something. So it's chained in place, and it won't go anywhere. So it's in neutral, and it's immobilized. So let's get started. So one other thing to talk about before we start this, a lot of people will come on the forums and their truck won't start, and there's a little bit of a mix-up in terminology, and I hate to be fussy about this, but when you're trying to ask somebody over the internet or the telephone or whatever a question about what your truck will, why it won't start, or what it will or won't do, terminology can be important. A lot of people will say, oh, my truck won't crank when it won't start, and if it won't crank, then that's an indication, or that's telling us that when you turn the key, the starter motor is not engaging and it's not turning the engine over. That's cranking the engine. In this case, my engine is cranking, okay? I can turn the key and the starter motor engages and it's turning the engine. So it's cranking, it's trying to start. The issue here is it will not fire and run. And that's a whole different thing from not cranking. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take the intake plenum off. All right, just loosen your hose clamp, whatever here. Mine looks a little different because I've got a custom intake built on here, and I'm going to lay that up there, and that's going to be in your way a little bit, but that's not too bad. Okay, and I've got the key in the ignition and it's turned to the run position, so that's important. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little wire off of the starter relay. This is not the starter solenoid, this is the starter relay. The starter solenoid is mounted to the starter motor way down there on the side of the engine. So we have three terminals here, but this terminal here should be battery positive. This terminal here goes to the starter motor, and this terminal here comes from the key switch. This is your signal that tells this relay to close and send power to the starter motor to turn the engine over. So I took that off, and I'm going to, so I don't have to go in there into the cab and try to do this, I'm going to connect these two terminals to make it crank. And while I do that, I'm going to spray starting fluid in the intake. Now this is called the 50-50 test. If it cranks and I pour starting fluid in there and it tries to fire and burn the starting fluid, then I know I have spark, and probably even compression. The engine needs three things in order to run. It needs fuel, spark at the right time, and compression. So what we're going to do is crank the starter and spray starting fluid in the intake at the same time. I'm going to spray some of this in there now just to get started, and let's see what we get. That something. It's running. After that happened, I started troubleshooting, and I put my jumper in the EEC connector, or the OBD1 connector, whatever you want to call it, and read codes, and I got a code 542, which states that the fuel pump circuit is open or has a bad ground or something like that. So it's pointing towards the fuel pump issue. After that, I tried starting the engine again, and it did not start. So let's do that one more time right here. I've got the key turned on again, and we're in neutral. So let's just try this again without even worrying about the starting fluid. All right, so there you see, we're not starting. I could try it with the starting fluid again, but I think we're going to see the same thing. We know we're getting spark. We saw that before. The engine did start and run. And we know we have a fuel pump issue here. But we just have to determine exactly what the fuel pump issue is. Now the next thing we can do is check the fuel pump relay and make sure that that's operating properly, or make sure that it's not the issue, because that's in the fuel pump circuit. Before I even do that, I'm going to take my meter, and if I don't forget to pull this out later before I try starting again, there we go. Maybe you can see that. So I have my meter set on DC volts, and I'm going to put one lead on ground and we should just be able to use the engine for that. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a ground connection right here on the firewall, so let's go to that. And I know from my owner's manual that this tiny little fuse right here is a fuel pump fuse. So on the back of the fuses, you see the conductor sticks through, and that's so you can stick a meter on here without pulling the fuse out and make sure you have voltage. So do that to both sides. And there we've got battery voltage on one side. You can see I've been trying to start this engine and the battery's starting to get down, so I'm going to have to put a charger on it later. And I'll go to the other side of the fuse. If I have 12 volts there, which I do, I have the same voltage, so that means the fuse is good. My fuel pump relay is right here, and you can't see it from there, but there's a diagram inside the cover here that shows me that. So I could pull that out, and we know that on a 5-pin relay, a common 5-pin relay, you put voltage to terminal 30, which is this one here and kind of in the middle that's turned sideways, and then that puts voltage either to the center terminal 87A when the relay is not energized, or to terminal 87 when the relay is energized, as if we're turning the key on to energize the fuel pump. So I should have voltage on terminal 30 in the base here, and I can do that. I'll go back to ground here and to terminal 30, and there's our battery voltage. So we know the fuse is good and we're getting power to the fuel pump relay. Now another test we can do, if we suspect the relay is bad, we could take another relay. This one right here is for the air conditioning, the wide open throttle relay, and it's just another common 5-pin relay. They're identical. So we could take that one out and put that over here and see if it works. So let's try that. And again, we've got nothing. If you're still not sure, or you don't have a spare relay, maybe you don't have that wide open throttle relay installed and you don't have any other spares with you, you can bypass the relay with a jumper like this. Now I made this up fancy and it has little spade connectors on it, and I'd recommend you make one of these and put it in your toolbox in the vehicle so you have it with you. I use this for the OBD1 connector for diagnostics, and we can use it now. We can plug that into 87, which is the wire that goes to the fuel pump, and we can plug it into 30, which should be our power. Okay, and again, and one of your troubleshooting tools is your ears. Okay, really about every time you turn the key, you should hear your fuel pump come on for a second or two, and I should hear it running now, and I don't. So with that bypass, we know we're putting voltage to the circuit to the fuel pump. Now let's try starting again. And you can see there's nothing. So I'm going to pull that back out, put the relay back where it belongs, and at this point we need to get to the fuel pump. Okay, we either have a bad fuel pump or we have a problem with the wiring. So the next thing I need to do is go back there and get access to my fuel pump. Now for most of you, that's going to mean either dropping the fuel tank, which is not a very easy thing to do. It can be done, a lot of people have done it, but it's not easy, especially if it's full of fuel, because it's kind of heavy. Or you lift the bed off the truck, which isn't hard. There's 6 bolts that hold the bed to the truck, and really all you have to do is remove those 6, actually remove the front 4 and loosen the rear 2 as far as you can, and that'll allow those rear 2 to keep the bed located, and you can just lift the front of the bed and prop it up with blocks of wood. Make sure it's really safely propped up so it doesn't fall on you while you're working under there, and that will give you access to the fuel pump on the top of the fuel tank. So I'll pause this for the moment and get set up for doing that. I have a custom bed on my truck, and when I built the bed I put a hinged cover in the bed so that I have access to all that. So that's the next thing we'll do here. I had a thought as I was looking at the diagrams and preparing to move this toolbox out of the way so I could get to my fuel pump access hatch in the bed. And I thought, you know, let's go ahead and check the inertia switch. I normally shy away from this. A lot of people think, oh, this inertia switch, it's a problem, and they always want to jump to that being the problem, and normally it's not. It should only be a problem if your vehicle has taken a fairly significant front impact, and that, you know, most people are not in that situation. You'd know it. You'd have, you know, most of the time you'll have damage to the front of your truck if you take enough impact to set off the inertial switch. With that said, I was four-wheeling recently, and I did take some front impact. I hit my front axle beam pretty hard on a rock. In fact, it bent the bracket a little bit where the driver's side axle beam pivot is. And I thought, you know, just on the off chance that was enough impact, let's check it. So your inertia switch is normally on the passenger side, and I hope we have enough light to see this, but it's right here down on the floorboards behind the carpet, just up under your glove box. And this is the wire that's plugged into it. It's just 2 wires. Should normally be that green and yellow and the red with the black stripe. And what I did was I unplugged that, and I made a little jumper to plug in and jumper that out to take the place of the switch. And when I went back and tried starting the truck, it started right up. Okay, when I tried to start it the first time, I did it using my wrench to jumper the starter relay up under the hood like I had been doing earlier, and it started right up. And then I put the ignition wire back on the small terminal of the starter relay. And I came in here and I put the key in, and forgive the dust, that's from four-wheeling, from traveling. And I turned the key and it started right up. And here's the 3rd start in a row with no problem at all. And everything seems to be working well. So, although I normally try to shy away from telling people to check that inertia switch, if you have had a front impact, go ahead and check it. And it's real easy to just jumper that out temporarily. And what I'll do is I'll either get a new inertia switch, or since I do a lot of off-roading, I may just connect those wires together down there and forget about it. I don't recommend that if you do a lot of highway driving. That's a safety feature to cut off the fuel pump if you're in an accident, and that reduces the chance of fire. So it's not always advisable, but this truck now spends the majority of its time off-road, and that could be more of a nuisance, as it was in this case, than a help. So I may just jumper that out and not replace it. I'm going to do a few more test starts before I do that, and just verify that that is what's going on. But here we go. That was start number 3. Here's start number 4. And it's working fine. So that may be the end of my episode today. If that doesn't do it, though, there's not a whole lot else. You could have a bad fuel pump. You could have bad wiring in between the fuel pump and the fuel pump relay, or even a bad ground. And let me show you up here under the hood, if I can without falling off the trailer. I used my EVTM to look up where the grounds for the fuel pump and the fuel pump sender go, and they go to that ground connection right here on the firewall near the starter relay. So the EVTM told me that, so that everything here is tight and snug, and I know I have a good connection here. So it wasn't going to be a ground problem at this location for me in this case. And at this point, I believe that's the end of this video, unless over the next week or two I find out that jumping the inertia switch did not fix it, and that I still need a fuel pump. In that case, I will go through and add the extra video section on to show you replacing the fuel pump. Thank you. Thanks for watching.